Racist boss screams at black staff in front of everyone. $2.8 billion acquisition falls apart. Racism in the workplace doesn't always scream in your face. Sometimes it smiles, pours a glass of whiskey, then pushes you off the chair you built with your own hands. An intense and gripping story is unfolding. So if you want to follow the full journey, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, dramatic stories ahead. 8:01 a.m., 47th floor of Archon Industries. The stark white light from recessed ceiling panels reflected off a 6-meter-long cherry wood table, polished to a mirror shine like a fashion runway, imported directly from Italy at a cost of over $85,000. In premium leather chairs sat 30 senior executives, each with a tablet, a cup of espresso, and the same kind of stare as Felim Raymond stood to present. Felim was the only black man in the room. No one said it, but everyone knew. He was the one who rebuilt the entire technical infrastructure of the $2.8 billion acquisition deal after the previous system crashed. No one else understood the layers of the current data architecture like he did. But no one mentioned his name when credit was given. They simply referred to him as the back-end engineer, or worse, that heavy-handed guy. As Felim was analyzing data optimization during the integration phase, the cold, loaded voice of CEO Dante Edna cut through the coherent flow of the presentation. Raymond, remind me again, how does someone like you even make it through our hiring process? HR must have been doing charity that day. The entire room froze for half a second. Then, a few chuckles scattered like someone had cued a laugh track to an inside joke. A marketing assistant lowered her head, trying to hide a grin. A vice president of human resources took a sip of water, mainly to avoid eye contact with Felim. Dante wasn't finished. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, as if about to deliver a lesson. Look at your hands, wide as shovel blades. That forehead? Low. That jaw? Square as a brick. If I saw you near the warehouse, I'd assume you were a forklift driver. Laughter erupted more clearly this time, not because it was funny, but because no one dared do otherwise. In a company culture where power was like air, if you didn't breathe it in, you suffocated. Felim remained standing, no expression, just the slight tremor in his fingertips, reflecting the red laser dot on the screen. His eyes didn't look at the CEO, didn't look at anyone. He focused on the data, the only thing in that room incapable of lying. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. Felim went on presenting. His voice was steady, articulate, unwavering, but devoid of warmth, like someone who had unplugged their emotions. A defense mechanism, a kind of self-quarantine against the toxicity he couldn't afford to react to if he wanted to keep his job. As the executives rose from their seats and began leaving, Dante let out another remark, this time louder, bolder, and meant to stick. Someone should get Raymond a delivery vest and a dolly cart. With that back, he'd move packages faster than he debugs code. One person repeated it word for word. Another laughed like they'd just watched a Netflix comedy special. Not a single person, not one, said, "That's not okay." Felim walked out of the room. The glass door clicked shut behind him, but the sound still leaked through the walls. Laughter, casual chatter, the echo of smugness. He stood in the white marble hallway, placing a hand on his chest as if to steady his heartbeat. No groaning, no protests, no curses. He simply closed his eyes and breathed deeply. 1, 2, 3. He had long since learned that people like him didn't get to react when disrespected. After that humiliating morning meeting, Felim was not called back to discuss the project. Instead, at exactly 12:04 p.m., his internal inbox pinged with a familiar subject line. Subject: Performance evaluation meeting. Room 17K, sublevel B3. No explanation. No CC to his direct manager. No attached performance report. Veteran employees in the company knew. Room 17K was an unspoken signal for strategic workforce realignment, a polite euphemism for career demotion, removal from executive visibility. Felim descended to the third sub-basement, once the main server ops floor, before the system was migrated to the cloud. The air felt different here. A musty mix of rusted metal and harsh disinfectant filled the space. The ceiling lights flickered, with only a single functioning strip that blinked every time a door opened. Room 17K was small, box-shaped, with a scratched white table, 2 stiff plastic chairs, and no windows. The opposite wall bore a coldly embossed phrase, "Workforce Transition Suite." Inside, 2 people were waiting, a senior HR officer and a transition coordinator. Both were white, dressed in gray suits, wearing stiff, rehearsed smiles like they'd been trained in the art of corporate empathy. They didn't call him by name as usual. They didn't ask, "How are you?" Instead, came a series of pre-programmed phrases. "Felim, thank you for arriving on time. This is part of our intensive development strategy. We see your potential thriving in a more focused environment, redefining career alignment to better match long-term aspirations." Felim didn't respond. He simply nodded, his eyes cold as a system fault graph. They slid a 3-page document in front of him, a temporary reassignment agreement, specifying new work location, sublevel B2, Southwest Wing, job function, system documentation support, internal verification, protocol annotation, duration, indefinite, title, reassigned, due to core competency aligned direction. Felim signed it. No protest. But he didn't forget to take a photo of the document using his personal phone, one not connected to the company's internal system. When he returned to his old desk, an IT staff member was already removing his hardware. His screen had been logged out, account credentials changed, and a paper labeled Internal Asset under reallocation was taped to the workstation. Before system of at 3:40 p.m., Felim was escorted to his new office. It wasn't an office. It was an old data archive room, once used to store physical drives over 15 years ago. Size, about 12 square meters. No windows, no air conditioning, no ventilation. Only a 2006 Toshiba standing fan in the corner, leaning sideways, whining every 4 seconds. Fluorescent lights, 2 tubes, one flickering, the other completely dead. His desk was a dusty old piece of compressed wood labeled "Formerly used by Data Migration Team, 2009. On the wall hung a tattered slogan, "Work silently. Think deeply." Felim said nothing. He powered on the machine, checked the network system, no Wi-Fi. LAN port disabled. It was a digital quarantine zone, fully isolated. In the following days, those who rarely passed that floor began referring to the space as the isolation chamber, or worse, the storage stall. And Felim, he was no longer called lead engineer. Among some senior colleagues, he was now simply the mule in the basement, the one who didn't respond, didn't talk, just worked in silence. That nickname, Mule, might have sounded amusing, but was deeply degrading. In office culture, nicknames are never just nicknames. They're compressed ideologies in a single word. While the executive team upstairs tested their new $12,000 espresso machine, Felim was using an old HP printer that required 2 taps on the tray just to print a page. Every day, he annotated over 12,000 rows of data for the system transition reports in the merger. Every line, every column, every timestamp was scanned with the precision of a conductor, checking tickets on a train that would never stop for him. One afternoon, Devon, a junior engineer, passed by the room. He hesitated, then asked, "You okay?" Felim didn't turn around. He simply replied, "I'm working." Devon paused for a beat, then walked away without another word. It wasn't a question that needed an answer. Everyone could see it. Felim wasn't okay, but he was choosing not to let anyone see. He wasn't okay. Meanwhile, upstairs, CEO Dante Edna was raising a glass of 25-year-aged scotch with the legal team, discussing streamlining the operational framework. He made a pointed remark. Some hires are made just to polish investor reports. Long term, they're not usable. A tech department manager chuckled awkwardly. "You mean Raymond?" Dante nodded, pouring another glass. "If I need muscle, I hire athletes. If I need brains, I start somewhere else." Below, Felim was completing the final version of the data verification module, the last before system integration for the Veltrium announcement. File size, 2.4 gigabytes. Content, full interdepartmental compatibility matrix. No one else understood the architecture fully, but no one in the executive tier mentioned his name. Inside that windowless room, beneath dimming fluorescent lights and the rattling fan, Felim sat silently building the very thing that would determine the company's valuation. And he wondered, will they even notice when the pillar disappears, the building collapses? Sometimes, an entire person's worth is strangled by a name, not the one their parents gave them, but the one others assign, a nickname, a joke, a sticker of prejudice spoken with a smile and masked with fake innocence. For Felim Raymond, that name was the Mule. Wednesday morning, 8:28 a.m., the hallway between two office blocks, the line dividing the executive floor from the data analysis wing, echoed with the sound of high heels. Finn Louisa, strategy director of Arxon, walked as if she had stepped out of a Balmain catalog. White blazer with a deep cut, charcoal pencil skirt, hair tied tightly in a twisted bun. Finn didn't shy from confrontation. She had never lost a meeting, and she certainly didn't hesitate to play smart with anyone she deemed weaker, especially Felim, whom she once removed from a project team with a conveniently CC-omitted email. She stopped right outside his door, a room with no nameplate, no sign, just a code label. Sub B 3A47. In one hand was an ember-cold brew bottle, in the other, an iPhone 15 Pro Max with a custom-engraved titanium case. Her voice rang out loudly, deliberately enough for passers-by to hear, "Oh, there he is. The Mule. I heard you worked through the night? No one's as tireless as you. Seriously, that's a compliment." Felim looked up from his screen, saying nothing. His expression was blank, like a circuit board that had just lost power. Finn smiled wider, still playing the friendly act. No questions, no complaints, no demands. Just works. Like a machine. Like a mule. But hey, efficient. If I had a team like yours, I would have led 3 campaigns last year. Then she took a sip of coffee, glanced at him from head to toe, as if checking tire pressure, and sighed. You probably don't get it. That's fine. Keep it up, all right? Someone's got to do the heavy lifting. She walked away, leaving behind an expensive perfume trail, like the lingering sting of a verbal slap. At 10 a.m. that day, an email from the personal assistant of CEO Dante Edna appeared across the entire operations division inboxes. Subject: Pre-Acquisition Records Initiative. Body: Archon is urgently finalizing an inventory sweep of documents tied to asset accumulations from pre-2012 acquisitions. We need volunteers to assist in sorting over 4,500 physical records stored in Basement Archive C. Duration: 3 days. No overtime pay. No bonus compensation. We trust that the cooperative spirit of all members will reflect Arkan's values: commitment, discipline, dedication. At the bottom was Dante Edna's digital signature. Anyone who'd worked at Arkson long enough knew. In this system, volunteer was code for coerced compliance. Those who didn't cooperate were flagged as lacking commitment, making them easy candidates for exclusion from key projects, or, like Felim, assigned to the organization's shadow zones. Felim didn't reply to the email, but at exactly 1:05 p.m., he appeared in Basement Archive C, carrying his own laptop and a file briefcase. Inside the room, 17 boxes of old documents were stacked, each weighing between 18 to 22 kilograms, filled with equity distribution charts, printed meeting minutes from 2010 to 2013, and HR records from dissolved subsidiaries. No supervisor, no instruction board, only a clipboard with a scribbled note. Scan, sort, tag. Returned by 9 p.m. Felim sat down, opened an Excel file on his computer, created a new tracking sheet, and began inputting data box by box. No one else came to help. Meanwhile, upstairs on the 6th floor, the brainstorm room had been converted into a creative recovery space where department heads were attending a mindfulness leadership session led by a Finnish meditation coach. A private sushi chef served bluefin sashimi and lemon honey detox water. A brand director fell asleep mid-meditation and was applauded for embracing vulnerability. Downstairs, Felim was sorting termite-bitten files with bare hands. No mask, no gloves. Every hour, he processed 63 records. Each record was entered 3 times: name, system code, and tag. By 6:30 p.m., his hands were stained black with ink from old files. By 9:12 p.m., he was the last to leave the archive room. At that exact moment, on the 2nd floor elevator, 3 executive assistants joked after hours. "The mule's still not done? Dude runs on solar power. Swear to God, strap some boxes on his back and he'd outpace FedEx." Felim passed by, neither looking nor reacting. But in his mind, every word was recorded. Not a syllable missed. The next day, a meme circulated in the internal group chat. A photo of Felim from last spring's office party, photoshopped with a mule's head. The caption below: "Work hard. Stay silent. Be the mule." No one deleted it. No one reported it to HR. The day after, someone added a red saddle with the marker. That same day, during the strategic meeting, Finn Louisa used the term "beast of burden" to describe the back-end workload. She wasn't speaking generally. She turned her face and looked directly at Felim. In the room was an HR rep, the same one once in charge of the diversity hiring strategy. He said nothing. His eyes stayed glued to his tablet. No one spoke. Not a single person. Felim knew. This wasn't about him anymore. This was a broken group culture. A system that knew who was wrong, but chose to laugh along to survive. And the one called the Mule was the only one remembering everything. Not with anger, but with data. Not with reaction, but with preparation. Not with combat, but with collection. One day, all those comments, all those looks, all those memes, they would come back. Not to claim justice, but to strike at the very system that had once laughed while he labored in the basement. The next day, Felim Raymond stepped into the 3rd floor common area to fill his thermos. In the silence of 7:36 a.m., the first thing he saw wasn't the water dispenser, but an A4 photo taped directly to the wall beside it. It was a picture of him, taken at last year's spring party, when he was carrying a speaker box for the event. But the head had been photoshopped into that of a mule. Long ears, droopy eyes, mouth biting a cartoon bundle of hay. In the image, someone had even skillfully added a red saddle and drawn a whip behind his back. Just below, in bold impact font, were the words, "Work hard." Silent like a legend. Felim stood still for a few seconds. Not because he was shocked, but because he wasn't surprised. He pulled out his phone and took a photo. Not to report to HR. He knew they wouldn't do anything. But to achieve it, time-stamp it, and send it straight to the folder, Abuse Evidence Cache Beta, in the cloud storage system he had quietly built 3 weeks ago. The photo disappeared after a few hours, not because someone took it down, but because it was replaced by a newer version. This time, still with the mule's head, but now enhanced with Disney-style animation and a speech bubble that read, "I don't need a brain, just heavy tasks." A day later, in the Thursday morning strategy meeting, Finn Louisa walked in late, holding a matcha latte. When asked about the back-end restructuring status, she pointed at the screen and said, "We're fine. The heavy lifting's been handled by the beasts of burden." She paused, then turned fully toward Felim, eyes fixed on him. "Isn't that right, Mule?" Silence. HR was in the room. Arthur Jennings, who had once spoken at a seminar on enhancing racial equity in internal hiring. He chuckled softly, took no notes. No one objected. No one followed up. At 1:17 p.m., Felim received an anonymous message via Archicomms, the internal chat platform accessible only to official employees. "Hey Mule, heard you're getting 2,000 more files to process. Hang in there. Try not to break your back." Felim didn't respond, but like everything else, he backed it up, captured it, encrypted it, and stored it. A week later, the third meme surfaced. This time, it was a full-color A3 poster, taped right outside the old server room, where Felim still worked every day. Big headline, "Arxon Mascot, 2024. The image showed Felim wearing the company jacket, but with a mule's body photoshopped beneath, alongside a slogan, "Work non-stop. No questions, no resistance." Someone had scrawled an extra tag on the poster with a marker, "Property of Logistics." Felim took a box cutter, sliced the poster in two, and put it into his document pouch. No one stopped him. No one witnessed it, except an intern who turned away too quickly, pretending not to see. Over the past 6 months, Felim had written over 17,000 lines of source code to integrate the new management system for the merger. He was the only one who fully understood the reversed API calls, the security layers transitioning between Oracle and Amazon Cloud, and the only person who had flagged the backdoor vulnerability in the two-step authentication protocol. Not a single line bore his name. Finn Louisa once said during an internal brainstorm session, "Felim is brilliant, but I think he's better suited for logistics. That physique, that intellect, fits a warehouse more than a boardroom." A tech director chimed in, "Who needs AI when we've got mule intelligence, right?" Laughter broke out across the room. In that quiet space, Felim opened his laptop and continued working. No reaction. Not a word. But another tab on his screen was open. Compliance Archive Alpha Zip, a folder growing fatter by the day. Worse than words was the collective attitude. One day, while he was scanning a batch of legacy documents from 2010, a group of 3 mid-level staff walked in. One held a file box, saw him, then turned to the others and said, "Careful, don't knock over the mule. He's in transport mode." No one laughed loudly, but everyone smiled. Slightly. Coldly. The kind of smile you often see from people who've labeled you as entertainment material. As they walked out, the last person paused, took a photo of Felim from behind. No permission. No attempt to hide. That photo later appeared in an internal sticker pack called Mule Pack. At 10:47 p.m. on a Friday night, Felim was still sitting in room sub B, 3A47. The air conditioner had long since broken, and the internal temperature was 29.4 degrees Celsius. The standing fan let out a tired whine. The fluorescent lights flickered in waves like a dying Morse signal. Felim was rewriting the security module for the analytics platform, the core piece to connect the two corporations before the signing. Only 3 people in the company understood that segment of code, but only one had written it from scratch. Beside him was a 2-terabyte hard drive, where he stored 3 encrypted copies containing 46 memes, 12 anonymous chat logs, 9 secretly recorded mocking videos, 7 audio recordings from internal meetings, 3 personnel data analysis files showing signs of racial bias. All were time-stamped, user-identified, and cross-referenced with system activity logs. Felim knew his silence wasn't weakness, it was the strategy. Every insult was a data line. Every meme was a piece of evidence. Every laugh was a connection point, tracing the deeper rot of a system quietly eating itself from within. That night, the sky above Arxon headquarters rooftop was glowing with lights. The rooftop was adorned with LED strings imported from Switzerland, a cocktail bar placed at the center, and behind it, a saxophone band played soft jazz harmonies. The cost of that evening's gala alone exceeded $470,000, according to the internal appraisal report. Everything was perfect, except one thing: the absence of the man who had built the entire operating system underpinning this event, Felim Raymond. This wasn't an ordinary party. It was a covert signing night, where investors from Veltrium Corporation came to evaluate the corporate spirit before confirming the $2.8 billion deal. Felim knew exactly what the event was. He was the one who set up the lighting control system, monitored the audio platform, and configured the live data dashboard for the investment oversight team. But by that afternoon, his name was still not on the guest list. 3:27 p.m. He scanned his card at the elevator to the rooftop. A red light blinked. The system displayed, "Access denied. Level restricted." He tried again. Still the same. 4 minutes later, Ella, Dante's executive assistant, showed up. She gave an awkward smile and said quietly, just loud enough that no one else would hear, "Felim, you've been assigned logistics support. I know it doesn't make much sense, but it's a matter of optics, not ability. Hope you understand." In her hand was a gray staff uniform, tags still attached. Meanwhile, Felim was wearing a handcrafted black suit, black silk tie, and Oxford leather shoes, the standard for high-level events. He looked at her, said nothing, then slowly removed his suit jacket, hung it in the hallway locker, and put on the uniform as if it were a second skin he was required to wear. At 7:05 p.m., the event officially began. Investors from Chicago, Singapore, and Paris arrived in private limousines. In the courtyard, CEO Dante Edna appeared like a glamorous host, shaking hands with each guest with a 30-year-aged wine glass in hand. Felim, who had worked nearly 700 hours in the past 2 months preparing the technical infrastructure for this gala, was carrying a tray of cranberry juice, weaving through the crowd. A little later, the audio glitched. The left speaker had a 0.2-second delay. Felim quietly pulled out an iPad mini from his service apron, accessed the remote adjustment system, and restarted the connection stream. 36 seconds later, the system stabilized. No one noticed, except Dante. Dante approached and patted Felim on the shoulder, just as he was wiping a splash of juice off a glass table. "Ladies and gentlemen, here's one of our backstage stars, the one keeping everything steady tonight." A few guests nodded politely, but no one shook their head. One turned away and said to their assistant, "They hired the right guy. Really sticks to his job." While everyone took photos with the branded backdrop, Felim had to stand 3 meters away, out of frame, to maintain visual consistency for media coverage. 9:41 p.m. It started to drizzle lightly. Felim quickly covered the electronic equipment with a specialized tarp. The rain lasted only 12 minutes, but if not handled properly, the data transmission system on the rooftop could have caused a short circuit. Another engineer didn't know how to shut down the backup signal, and it was Felim, the one mocked as the Mule, who sneaked into the tech zone, entered 2 internal command lines to redirect the data output port, saving the entire night from a multi-million-dollar PR disaster. No one knew. No one said anything. The next morning, Arcsyn's internal newsletter posted an article, "Strategic Gala Night, when Arcsyn and Veltrium became one." The article spanned 1,200 words, with 17 photos, of the CEO, the executive board, the media team, the chefs, and the bartenders. Not a single mention of Felim, no technician photos, no one from the control room, no trace of the man who operated the system. Below the article, Finn Louisa commented, "An incredible night. Thank you to everyone who made this miracle happen." Another replied, "Teamwork masterpiece. We've proven our class." Felim read up to that point and turned off his screen. He wasn't angry, not outraged, just logged it into his digital journal alongside the note, erased from the visuals because of skin color, but still, the one who held the foundation. All images will disappear. Data won't. That evening, when no one was left on the rooftop, Felim returned to the systems. He reviewed the entire control log from the event night. Every action he took was recorded. The time he fixed the audio delay, the command to cut off data signals during the rain, the lighting reset when backup power overheated. He created a 22-page PDF. Technical operations, rooftop event night, complete with digital signature and timestamp. He stored it in a private drive, triple encrypted, and sent it to a backup personal email protected by 3-factor authentication. On Monday morning, during the final week of Q3, an internal email from the Investor Relations Department was sent to over 50 senior leaders at Arcsyn and Veltrium. Confidential, quarterly technical review. Session time, Wednesday, 10 a.m., 11:45 a.m. Location, Horizon Room, 49th floor. Presenter, Felim Raymond, Principal Systems Architect. It was the investors from Veltrium who specifically requested Felim's presence. They had previously received an internal technical report containing code authored by him, one that reduced data processing time from 1.9 seconds to 0.7 seconds, improving system efficiency by 63% during trial runs. For the past 3 weeks, Felim had been preparing a 76-slide deck. Every dataset presented with interactive charts, benchmark comparisons, and detailed breakdowns across the 3 IT infrastructure integration phases. He had rehearsed no fewer than 12 times, recording himself, adjusting speech pace, tone, even eye contact. He knew this review wasn't just a technical opportunity. It was a political trial. That morning, at 9:54 a.m., Felim arrived outside the Horizon Room, 49th floor, a place reserved for meetings about acquisitions, strategic direction, or multi-million-dollar decisions. He wore a freshly pressed white shirt, a custom-cut navy suit, and a refined ash-gray tie. In hand, a Surface Pro 10 Elite, preloaded with the presentation. The meeting room was brightly lit. On the table were 10 digital signature pads for the investors. A video bridge from Frankfurt was also live. Veltrium's representatives were all industry veterans: Jacqueline Rhodes, CIO, Henry Lee, head of system integration, and Seth Kildare, a data expert who once lectured at MIT. Felim stood near the LED screen as Dante Edna walked in, holding a thick printout, smirking as though anticipating a joke about to land. Dante introduced, "Ladies and gentlemen, today's technical presentation will be led by our chief engineer, Mr. Felim Raymond. Fair warning, if you're not into tech, brace yourself. We call him the compiler. He doesn't stop talking." Scattered laughter broke out. Some smiled politely. A French investor shook his head slightly and whispered to his colleague in their native tongue. Felim stood upright, showing no reaction. He began, "Thank you to the executive board for this opportunity. Today, I'll cover 3 key areas: data stream optimization, integrated connection security, and real-time system recovery module structuring." His voice was steady, deep, neither rising nor falling, but clear. The charts on the LED screen seemed to sync with each sentence. Slide 7. System architecture model. Slide 14. Load test reports under 3.2 million requests. Slide 22. Cost analysis. Nearly $1.4 million per year saved by optimizing boot data. By slide 28, Dante interrupted. "Hold on. Felim, honestly, you sound like a drive-through speaker." Same flat tone. Nobody can stay awake. The room burst into laughter. One investor nearly choked on his coffee. Jacqueline Rhodes handed a tissue to the person next to her. Someone murmured, "Oh, God." Felim didn't laugh. He paused for 3 seconds, then said, "I understand the feedback. To make it easier to follow, I'll switch to a real-time interactive model." He tapped. The slide transformed. All models animated. Technical layers in motion. Each click unveiled visual stats, showing ROI by time segments, something only high-level professionals could build. The room went silent. When the presentation ended, precisely at 11:43 a.m., no one clapped, but no one left immediately either. Investor Seth Kildare leaned forward and asked, "Felim, your automatic cache warm-up distribution model, has it been trialed in production?" Felim nodded. He pulled the log from last week's test, showing response times dropped from 900 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds using that model. Kildare nodded, quietly jotting it down. However, the handwritten feedback afterward told a different story. In the post-review summary report, there were notes such as, "Voice too monotone, lacks emphasis. Needs to improve public speaking skills. Content is deep, but presenter lacks executive presence." Dante didn't miss his chance. During the internal wrap-up at 3:17 p.m. that same day, he turned to Finn Louisa and said, "Told you." Felim belongs behind the screen. Every time he opens his mouth, I'm reminded of my old radio, all static. The room erupted in laughter. Finn leaned sideways, giggling, tapping her notepad like she was playfully agreeing. That night, no code was written. No data stream improved. No system updates pushed to the cloud. Only Compliance Archive Alpha was opened. Felim sat in the nameless room under flickering fluorescent lights that pulsed like the breath of a wounded beast. He opened the directory, clicked on the tab. Quarterly review log. Included. Audio file from his lapel mic. 16-bit WAV. Recorded the entire session. 3 images clearly showing investors laughing at the ridicule. 2 video clips from surveillance cameras showing Dante's expressions before, during, and after the presentation. Screenshots of feedback criticizing his delivery, despite the fact that his model met global benchmark standards. He saved everything, attached SHA-256 hashes, and uploaded to a private blockchain-based secure system he had developed himself, immutable, unalterable. After the Q3 review riddled with veiled mockery, Felim Raymond returned to his cold coffee, a dark screen, and the only sound in the room. The dry whir of a desk fan, like the final breath of an outdated system. He didn't write code. He didn't draft a new roadmap. Instead, he opened the server log. At 2:17 a.m., the first red line appeared. Unauthorized data override. User ID, FR_dev_alpha. That was his ID. But the next log line revealed something unusual. The login IP didn't belong to the internal network. The timestamp matched the exact time he was in a meeting with Veltrium's technical team. The commands executed didn't follow the encryption protocols he had set. Modified content included. Benchmark performance data inflated by 12%. Backup reports showed incorrect timestamps. Two-factor authentication scripts had been injected with a temporary unlock function, a command Felim had previously flagged as extremely risky if abused. He checked the SSL certificate files and discovered a forged duplicate, valid for only 3 days, used to access the CloudStack server without reauthorization. Someone was building a false narrative, but more importantly, they were pinning the blame on him. At 3:14 a.m., Felim accessed a secondary server, comparing last week's backup log with the current version. In just 48 hours, there had been over 213 alterations to the original command set, all under his management scope, all logged under his personal ID. He extracted the entire log, saved it in SHA 512 format with a UTC timestamp identifier. He then compressed them into 3.7Z files, named Echo Rift 1, Cross Delta, TruthArc 47. They were stored on a separate SSD, completely offline. Felim knew a single upload mistake could get everything altered, or erased entirely. The next morning, at 8:37, Felim stood in front of the office of Amy Matilda, Senior Director of Strategic HR and Internal Security. She was a seasoned figure, once praised by the press as the mind and heart of Arxon. He presented briefly, placing a 256-bit encrypted USB drive on the glass table, sliding it gently toward her. "I'm not here to file a complaint. I'm here to warn that unauthorized access attempts are being fabricated to sabotage my technical credibility and could jeopardize the Veltrium deal if anyone digs into the real data." Amy didn't touch the USB. She looked up, eyes devoid of emotion. "Are you sure you want to take it this far?" There was no inflection, no expression. But Felim understood. It wasn't advice. It was a threat wrapped in sills. Without another word, Felim retrieved the USB, gave a slight nod, and turned to leave. Amy didn't call him back. She didn't need to. The door shut behind him with a sound discreet yet heavy, like a verdict. That afternoon, he began building a separate archival system, naming it Truth Wall. Its operation involved 5 layers. Encrypt content using AES 256. Every document is split into 4 parts, each encrypted with a unique key. Digitally sign with SHA 3 authentication to ensure content can't be secretly altered. Upload to a distributed storage network hosted across 3 servers in 3 different countries via a multi-layered VPN. Activate a timed release. If not manually stopped within 30 days, the system would automatically send access links to 17 preset email addresses, including journalists, human rights organizations, and legal offices. Third-party notarization. Felim registered with a tech firm in Luxembourg, specializing in validating technical documents for litigation. All evidence would be printed, sealed, and physically stored in ISO/IEC 27001 certified facilities. No one at Arxon knew about the system. Felim wrote the entire backend in Python and Rust, using a Raspberry Pi server as a secure gateway, only active with a signal from his smartwatch, a black Garmin fitness band no one paid attention to. Over the next 12 days, Felim wrote almost no new code for Arkson. Instead, he backed up 423 internal documents suspected of tampering, recorded 12 strategy meetings where he was publicly ridiculed, saved 37 internal emails with racially biased language, especially from Finn Louisa and the intermediary tech team. GPS logged server access to confirm who logged in from where, analyzed unauthorized traffic, identifying at least 2 covert admin accounts created using API vulnerabilities in the company's outdated internal software version. He disclosed nothing. Quietly, he built a legal data vault. One night, while rechecking the system in basement level B3, Felim ran into Kara, the young intern who had looked away when she saw the mule meme posted on the wall. She looked at him, then hesitantly said, "I saw that was wrong, but I just started. I didn't dare speak up." Felim smiled. He handed her a small envelope with no name. Inside was a slip of paper with only one line. "The truth doesn't need to be defended. It needs to be prepared." Sub-level 3, with its lingering smell of damp air vents and flickering LED lights due to lack of maintenance, had never been a place of resistance. But that night, at exactly 11:23 p.m., Felim Raymond received an anonymous message via Signal. "Data vault. South side access. Come alone." He wasn't surprised. He wasn't afraid. He quietly slipped a 512-bit encrypted USB into the inner pocket of his coat and walked past stained corridors tangled with electrical cables. When he arrived, the dim light cast a faint glow over the side door, where a woman was standing. Kara. Once an administrative support staff member in the R&D department, Kara Williams had been at Arkson for over 12 years. She wasn't prominent, wasn't ambitious, and wasn't tied to million-dollar projects. People called her the background character, always around to photocopy documents, deliver coffee, or man the front desk, but never asking questions. That's precisely why no one expected the petite woman, with her dark blonde hair always in a neat bun and a hesitant gait, to be the one holding one of the most crucial pieces of truth. In Kara's hands was a dark gray envelope, sealed tightly with 3 layers of masking tape, unmarked. She handed it to Felim. Her voice was soft, but steady. I've kept this for 3 months. I saw, I knew, I recorded. I think you need it more than I do." He opened the envelope. Inside were 39 laser-printed pages, each verified with a timestamp from the Lotus system, Arkson's internal document registration software. An email from Finn Louisa to HR stating, "Felim Raymond is unsuitable for a multicultural executive environment. Role reassessment required." Minutes from a closed-door meeting on April 17th on the 38th floor, where Dante Edna said, "We need to assign technical liability if risks arise. Raymond is ideal. Because he's silent." An unpublished internal legal memo from 6 months ago by an external law firm, concluding, "The language and behaviors within Arkson, including terms like the mule, beast of burden, and assigning heavy side tasks to a specific individual, could be deemed racially discriminatory under U.S. legal context." Felim said nothing, not out of shock, but out of confirmation. He had sensed it, suspected it, but this was the first time the truth was printed in black and white. Kara added, her eyes as still as ash, "I know they're preparing to pin everything on you. If the merger fails, you'll be the tech obstruction. But I can't stand watching anymore." Felim nodded. He carefully pulled a mobile scanner from his pocket, a device no bigger than a phone, capable of scanning at 600 dpi and saving directly to his encrypted cloud drive. Each page was encrypted using AES XTS with rotating keys, Every 2 pages used a different key, forming a chain of authentication that couldn't be randomly deciphered. In total, he created 3 backup copies, stored on servers in New York, Amsterdam, and Seoul. Each was protected by 2-factor authentication and could only be accessed with both the primary device and a code from a standalone app he had written himself. Once done, Felim placed his hand on the old envelope and lit it with a lighter. Kara didn't ask. She understood. Before turning to leave, she left behind a small handwritten note on inked paper. They forgot who they stepped on that night. The handwriting was curved, soft, but struck like a punch at the heart of Arcson's power structure. 24 hours later, Arcson's intranet broadcasted an internal announcement. Announcement: restructuring of merger team. The system integration team was reannounced, led by Dante Edna, Chief Coordinator; Fun Louisa, Merger Strategy; Kyle Thornton, Technical Lead; Kara Williams, General Administration. Felim Raymond's name was nowhere to be found. The internal presentation slides were redesigned, removing all of Felim's work from 4 weeks prior. In its place were new slides, built with Power BI using Veltrium branding, with Felim's code translated into graphical icons. No trace of the original technical lines he had written. At the bottom of each slide, content by Joint Creative Group. Copyright Arcson and Veltrium. That night, Felim felt no anger. He sat before his screen, opening each log Kara had provided, cross-checking them with the data chains he had gathered. Every piece matched. Every detail fit like a massive puzzle he alone held the blueprint for. He reopened the internal power structure map, redrawn using AI, showing vague connections, interest groups, and each person's vulnerabilities. Kara's name was marked in blue. Positive witness, he tagged her document, the first to stand up. On Wednesday morning at 7:32 a.m., Felim Raymond left his studio apartment on the 15th floor in the Bronx. He wore a simple black suit, no label, no tie, no Arcson insignia. Under the pale yellow light of dawn, his steps weren't fast, but rhythmic, like a conductor walking into the concert hall before his final performance. In his hand, he carried only one thing: a white envelope sealed with red wax, embossed with a stylized triangle, a symbol few recognized, except those occupying the highest tiers of the financial world. At 8:14 a.m., Felim arrived at 189 West 54th Street, a building with no signage, no promotional glass facade. Its front was clad in black stone, with 3 layers of security doors, and 2 guards in dark gray suits, standing like statues. Felim didn't show a badge, didn't present an ID. He said only one sentence. For Mr. Trozenbach, color code E5. Without another word, the guards checked the internal encryption list. 3 seconds later, the door opened. Felim stepped into a different tier of the world. In a 6th-floor conference room, a sealed chamber without phone signals, cameras, or recording devices, Mr. Jacob Trozenbach, International Financial Strategy Advisor and anonymous member of the Veltrium Arcson Merger Oversight Board, was waiting. Felim placed the envelope on the table. He didn't sit, didn't speak at length, just one sentence, cold as the first frost. Deliver this to Veltrium's investment board before Friday. If not, we all lose. Mr. Trozenbach opened the envelope. Inside was just a single A4 sheet. No logo, no stamp. But its content was a decryption instruction for a distributed data chain, along with access credentials to read internally altered documents, emails confirming discriminatory behavior, a detailed timeline of manipulated technical commands, and most critically, evidence that Felim had been deliberately erased from his primary role as a scapegoat in the event of merger failure. The next day, at 10:11 a.m. New York time, the financial market began to react. Arkson stock code, ARK, trading at $117.23, suddenly froze for exactly 13 seconds, an event not seen since 2014. The reason noted on Bloomberg Terminal: irregular algorithmic audit alert, pending verification. In financial circles, only insiders understood. Someone had triggered auto audit mode, and someone had pulled the alarm. Arkson remained silent. Veltrium gave no response, but internally, the system began to stir. Felim's name, previously removed from the personnel database, was suddenly no longer blocked. But when searched in the system, it returned only one result: unknown external. Ghost entry. He had become a ghost with access, but no one knew where, who, or when he would appear. 48 hours later, Felim received a small envelope placed in the mailbox slot at his boarding house. No sender name, no ink stamp, but inside was a guest access card, issued by Arkson's own security system. The machine-printed line read, "Temporary access. Level R, restricted. Valid 1 day only." On the back of the card, access to floor 47, executive wing, room 4703. Who sent it? Why? No one knew. But Felim understood. Someone inside had chosen not to stay blind. At 9:03 the next morning, he walked into Arkson headquarters like a free variable. No longer an employee, not part of any department, assigned to no role, which made him more dangerous than anyone in the system. Felim passed the reception desk, the same one that had once denied him entry to the rooftop party, with light steps and eyes that searched for no one. One swipe of the guest pass, green light. The guard bowed instinctively. No one recognized him. In the elevator, he stood beside Finn Louisa, who was too busy staring at her phone to look up. Floor 47 appeared. The door opened. Felim didn't walk in immediately. He turned, looked back. No one knew that in his hands. Data was already detonating, but not loudly. It was silent, precise, beat by beat. Each step he took into the main hallway was a tick in the countdown. In room 4703, Kara was already waiting, with a laptop offline, battery full, SSD plugged in. On screen, 3 zip files were ready. Root chain VX. Legal fault TL. Ghost frame Felicity. Felim sat down. No greetings, no introduction. Just one question hangs between the ceiling and the hearts of those who once underestimated him. Who will be the last to fall when the entire fortress is built on deception? The bell had tolled, and Felim, the man once erased, was rewriting the DNA of the entire system. 9:47 a.m., Investment Council Room of Arkson Veltrium, Executive West Floor. This wasn't just a meeting room. It was a stage of power, where all eyes turned to the one chosen to lead a $2.8 billion empire. Today, that space was prepared more meticulously than ever. Deep blue velvet curtains drawn tight to dim the midtown Manhattan sunlight. A 10-meter-long ebony wood table with laser-etched investor names on its glass surface. An 8K projector already queued with slides. And at the center, Dante Edna, in a bespoke light gray suit, Hermes tie, his smile rehearsed through 17 mirror checks. Behind him stood the usual allies. Finn Louisa, arms crossed, as if only waiting for contracts to be signed. Amy Matilda, with a speech prepared in 3 languages tucked into her bag. Kyle Thornton, nodding in agreement with anything superiors said, even when they were wrong. Opposite them were 11 investors, each managing at least one fund worth over $200 million. The youngest was 52, the oldest 74. They were there to hear the founding leadership team present the final step of the merger. They were there to vote, They were there to decide the future. Dante stepped to the head of the table and pressed the projector button. The first slide displayed the words, "We build future. Together." He began his presentation with the poise of a statesman. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is not just about a merger. It is a leap into the future, a union of technology and leadership." Gentle nods, quiet consensus. At that moment, the door opened. Everyone turned. A man in a black suit, gray shirt, no tie, entered. No badge, no assistant in tow. But in his hand was a large envelope sealed with red wax. Felim Raymond. His footsteps echoed with clarity, each step like a heartbeat, about to witness the rewiring of an entire organization's lifeblood. Dante chuckled, a mix of awkwardness and mockery. "Oh, Raymond. Would you mind grabbing us a few espressos? Seems the investment board might need some caffeine to digest all the technical terms." Laughter burst briefly, but no one laughed long. Because Felim didn't react as he usually did. He stood upright, hands steady, gaze unshaken. "Strong coffee or espresso, sir? I hear legacies often need a jolt to wake up." 1 second of silence. Then the entire room felt vacuumed of air. An older woman with silver hair pinned by a jade clip, voice laced with a Swiss accent, asked sharply, "Excuse me, isn't this the lead systems model designer from Arkson?" Dante froze. He was just part of the team, a large team. Finn Louisa interjected, smiling defensively. Felim was reassigned before the model was finalized. The technical team. The woman cut her off. "But didn't I receive a memo 3 months ago confirmed via technical email, authored by him?" The air thickened. Glances darted around. Dante, Amy, Kyle. None had an answer. Felim didn't argue. He didn't need to speak further. He walked to the council assistant, seated at the end of the table in a charcoal suit, the one responsible for maintaining the official record. He placed the envelope on the table. Inside, 7 curated documents, time verified through blockchain legal stamp. Each page had a QR code linking to the Compliance Archive Alpha database. Included were evidence of deliberate data tampering, internal meeting minutes describing the policy of assigning technical responsibility to non-reactive staff. The original algorithm spec sheet signed by Felim, later altered to remove his logo. An internal email from Finn Louisa, calling Felim the ideal backup if a scapegoat is needed. Felim didn't need to present further. The document spoke for him. The room fell into a structural power collapse. A Japanese investor pushed back from his chair. A Korean executive began flipping through the printed pages. A Toronto-based advisor turned to her assistant. "I want verification of the signature in the internal system." "Now." Dante interrupted. Voice rushed. "Ladies and gentlemen, there may be a misunderstanding. I can clarify." But he couldn't. Because for the first time, the gravitational pull of the boardroom no longer orbited him. Felim sat down in an empty chair, without asking, uninvited. And no one dared to tell him to leave. An internal call was placed to the legal department. A staffer entered with document authentication. Bold print read, "Valid evidence. No irregular modifications detected from the Raymond source." No one spoke for 87 seconds. Then, one of the investors asked Dante, "If you're not truthful about who built the system, what else aren't you telling us?" There was no need for a conclusion. With a single envelope and well-timed silence, Felim shattered structural trust, the one thing holding up a tech empire. The question was no longer, will the merger succeed? It was, who lied? And why did they think they wouldn't be caught? Felim didn't need to answer. He simply looked at Dante, for the first time, no longer the center. 10:18 a.m. The air in the Executive West boardroom was torn apart, not by shouting, not by argument, but by prolonged silence. The investment board decided to pause the meeting for 15 minutes, citing the need to review supplementary materials not included in the original agenda. No one objected, not even Dante Edna, whose shirt collar was now soaked with sweat beneath his designer suit. His eyes scanned the room for an ally, but everyone was too busy. Reading. The room had split into two spaces. On one side, the former power holders, now silent. On the other, Felim Raymond, standing in the far corner. No employee badge, no nameplate, no laptop, only data. And preparation. 10:24 a.m. The door opened again. A middle-aged woman in a charcoal cardigan with her hair in a low bun walked in. No one recognized her, until Kara placed a thick black folder on the central table, at least 3 centimeters thick, sealed with a red stamp marked "Internal Use Only." The records manager opened the folder. The first page bore a typed heading: Ethics Violation Index, Arkansas Technology, FY 2021 to 2024. Below were 30 internal ethical violations, verified by a third-party audit firm, 7 coordinated wrongful terminations, with falsified reports, invalid reasons, and evidence from internal cameras. 2 performance review contracts tampered with, confirmed by legal as unsuitable for public presentation. The entire investment board stopped turning pages. Amy Matilda was the first to react, her voice nearly cracking. This document isn't legal. It wasn't approved through the routing system. Felim raised his head, eyes devoid of anger or mockery, only an ice-cold clarity. When a company refuses transparency, it forfeits the right to invoke process. 10:27 a.m. Felim pulled from his jacket a small device, about the size of an external hard drive, with a deep red circular button on its face. It was a secure coded tool plugged directly into Arx and Veltrium's internal network. He connected it to a secondary port in the meeting table. The projector lights flickered for 2 seconds, then stabilized. A message appeared on the large screen. Real-time financial integrity scan, initiated by third-party authority. Verifying transaction pathways. Securing regulatory clearance. Please wait. Dante jumped up. What the hell is this? Who authorized you? Before he could finish, all the phones in the room buzzed simultaneously. A warning line appeared. Alert. Transaction code 9003. Funds transfer suspended. Source: Veltrium Capital East. Triggered by automated integrity lockdown. Status: unauthorized pathway detected 10:30 a.m. The door swung open. A Veltrium compliance officer, gold ID badge, senior rank, salt and pepper hair, entered without breath or greeting and announced, Veltrium's financing branches in Frankfurt, Singapore, and Boston have suspended transit accounts. The merger capital flow is temporarily frozen. The room locked in tension. A German investor pulled out his phone, signaling to his assistant, "Switch to contingency protocol. Full audit team this afternoon." A Canadian investor whispered, "We can't proceed without absolute transparency." Dante Edna could no longer speak. He braced himself on the table. His body trembled slightly, lips pale. Behind him, no one stood anymore. Louisa had retreated to her own chair, avoiding all eye contact. Kyle stared at his hands, as if realizing they no longer controlled the keyboard of power. Amy Matilda, who once dismissed Felim's evidence, looked at him, and for the first time, that gaze held no contempt or wariness, only awe and realization. Felim said nothing more. He didn't need to shout that he had been right. He didn't need to accuse anyone out loud. He only needed one button. and the truth. The truth, when structured, when supported by evidence, when protected by systems, it could paralyze a multi-billion-dollar transaction in just 47 seconds. On the large screen, the system displayed the final result. Verification complete. Financial transparency compromised. Action required. A board of investors had entered the meeting to sign. Now, they were backing away one by one, like passengers stepping off a vehicle about to explode. October 12th, 6:43 p.m. The entire internal financial system of Arx and Veltrium registered a strange status code. Status: transaction void. Audit lockdown. Triggered value affected. $2,813,005,790 Reason: external integrity. Interruption plus internal ethical violation alert. This alert wasn't broadcast through the internal speakers. It went straight to the Emergency Operations Center at Veltrium Capital in Geneva, where all transactions over $500 million are monitored by artificial intelligence and 3 layers of human oversight. The first to pull out of the deal was Sapphire Atlantic Investment Fund, London. They sent their notice at 7:11 p.m., suspending all transactions with Arx and Veltrium due to unresolved internal ethics investigation. Within just 4 hours, 6 of the 11 major investors successively announced their withdrawal. By 10:06 p.m., the $2.8 billion deal was officially placed on indefinite hold, with the reason: discrepancies in transparency, organizational accountability, and personnel risk management. The next morning, October 13th, 8:15 a.m., an email with the subject: FWD. Subject: Racial Bias Review. Urgent. Surfaced on the internal network. Leaked from the anonymous address: equaltruth@tutanota.com. Attached were 84 internal emails from 2021 to 2024, with subjects like, "He doesn't fit the profile, just let him sit quietly." Assign the bug code to Raymond. Legal will handle the rest. Screenshots of Slack messages where Finn Louisa used a mule emoji with the caption, "Still surprisingly durable." HR meeting notes from March 2023, referring to temporary transfers to avoid internal polarization in communications, along with a handwritten note: "They can mute my mic, but they can't block the email." Signed, Cara. 11/22. And CNN Business. Breaking news: Arx and Veltrium, from I pioneer to $2.8 billion moral collapse. The leaked files reveal a chain of racial bias, reporting fraud, staff coercion, and falsified technical contributions aimed at misleading investors. Within 48 hours, dozens of other outlets followed. Bloomberg called it the undoing of a phantom empire. The New York Times ran the headline, "One button and a dream dissolves." NBC aired a clip from the boardroom camera capturing Felim's voice. When a company refuses transparency, it forfeits the right to invoke process. It became the most shared quote of the week. That evening, an anonymous Twitter X account posted a 1-minute 47-second clip. Felim walking out of the boardroom in silence, down a hallway where someone once called him a forklift. The soundtrack, a slow piano piece titled "The Ones They Overlooked." Caption: sometimes, you don't need recognition to be the reason the system is forced to reckon with itself. The video reached 3.4 million views in 6 hours. October 14th at 8:45 a.m. Langford Doran, COO, who oversaw merger operations, arrived at the office. His access card had been deactivated. Security escorted him to a holding room. The legal department asked him to hand over devices, confirm access logs, and sign a voluntary resignation form. He refused. They immediately handed him a letter of termination for breach of process trust. Finn Louise's access was suspended overnight. Amy Matilda hadn't shown up for 36 hours. There was no statement from Dante Edna until the internal PR office released an unusual notice. The CEO is currently on an international business trip to address strategic partner concerns. All communications should be directed to authorized legal counsel. October 15th, at 10 a.m., civil rights organizations began to mobilize. The NAACP demanded a full ethics investigation. The National Employment Lawyers Association issued a formal request for Arxon Veltrium to disclose all HR policies from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2024. The U.S. Commission on Human Rights demanded the complete list of employees who were reassigned due to organizational structure. Even Senator Caroline Hughes, typically silent on tech matters, tweeted, "Innovation cannot thrive when built on bias, distortion, and silence." October 16th at 6 p.m., the board convened a special internal ethics hearing. A notice was posted on the internal network. High-level session, crisis management on ethics and reputation. Location, headquarters, room 38. A. Attendees, entire executive board, legal department, and major shareholder representatives. There were no invitations, no media presence. But outside the door, 50 former employees stood in formation, holding signs that read, "We are no longer silent." No one knew where Felim Raymond was. Some rumors said he had flown to Toronto. Others claimed he was working anonymously as an advisor for a non-profit tech trust. Some believed he no longer cared. But all agreed on one thing. History has been rewritten, not by the pen of leadership, but by the hand of the rejected. And even though his name was never engraved on the Founders of Honor plaque in the main lobby, all that remained after the quake was a single line of code. Felim.alpha. Integrity equals true. A simple line. But enough to collapse an empire and build an era where truth no longer lies buried in the basement. November 2nd, 1 year after the crisis. Detroit, Hall 4 of the John Dingell Convention Center, host of the 11th National Restorative Justice Conference. A large black banner hangs in the main foyer, white letters printed across. Repair, restore, respect. This year's theme, rebuilding from ruins with data and people. This isn't a televised event. No lapel microphones, no follow spots, no red carpet. But it is known that those who gather here are the ones who've lived through the collapse of systems and survived, not by title, but by ethics and data. 11:04 a.m. At the podium stands a simple cardboard nameplate, Felim Raymond, independent advisor on data transparency. He steps up not in an Armani suit, not under the glare of press lights, but in a navy blue shirt, no tie, holding a few pages of handwritten notes clipped together. The entire hall of nearly 400 people, nonprofit leaders, legal scholars, policy tech professors, rise in silence, not out of habit, but because this man had once done what regulations could not: expose an empire without shouting, using only lines of code and a folder placed at the precise moment. Back row, section C29. A man sits quietly, mostly silver hair, a worn-out suit, creased lapel, unpolished shoes. No one recognizes him as Dante Edna, former CEO of Arxon Veltrium, once controlling 5% of its operating equity, once moving billions with a single call. Now, he sits among those he used to deem peripheral. No VIP badge, no escort. Felim begins his speech. He doesn't look at Dante. He doesn't mention a single name from the previous year's events. He doesn't retell stories of humiliation, defamation, or rejection. Instead, He opens with a single systems-level sentence. The system does not fail by accident. It is built to do so. The hall goes still. Then he continues. When someone says, "This was an isolated incident," it's usually an excuse. What they don't want you to see is that exclusion is baked into the system. And to dismantle it isn't about revenge, but about making it irreproducible. Felim brought no PowerPoint, no charts, no academic quotes. Instead, he shares his own story. No names, no villains. Just an engineer, archived, nicknamed, dismissed as a breathing forklift. Just a person who built a resistance library in silence. Just someone never invited to the party he helped build. 11:42 a.m. He ends with a line. Recovery is not about going back to where you were. It's about building the place others never wanted you to exist in. The entire hall rises, a second time. But this time, applause erupts. Not raucous, not full of slogans. Just steady, strong claps, like the heartbeat of Detroit itself. Dante Edna does not approach. As the crowd disperses, he rises last, stepping near the hallway, where Felim is signing notebooks for young students. No one notices the silver-haired man behind the column. There is no staged apology, no dramatic repentance, only a nod, slight, but weighty. A nod from someone who once looked down, now forced to acknowledge, not to the crowd, but to himself. Felim glances briefly, but doesn't nod back, doesn't speak. He simply stands tall, looking forward, continuing onward with calm steps. Because he doesn't need redemption. He doesn't need reputation restored. He already holds what matters most. Freedom of mind, truth in hand, and respect without needing to be named. One student's notebook holds a final line. A hero isn't the one who steps up to be praised. It's the one who walks out of the shadows and makes the world re-examine the system that created them. And Felim, once called a mule, a carrier, a silent engineer, is now the one who forced an entire industry to redefine what it means to be human capital. The ending of this story isn't the collapse of a billion-dollar merger, nor the fall of a disgraced CEO. What lingers is the unwavering presence of a man once dismissed, cast into shadow, yet who chose truth over resentment, transparency over vengeance. Felim Raymond never had to shout to be heard. He let his actions speak, and that quiet weight dismantled an entire structure of injustice. How many Felims are silently working in every organization, diligent, unseen, labeled, yet forming the very foundation of the system's operations? Are we unknowingly complicit in upholding biased structures we fear to question? These are not easy questions, but they are unavoidable. If you want more stories like this, real, weighty, and thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Black Strength stories. We'll return with more stories that make you look twice at society and at yourself.